I want to give you a number today. Not a range, but a specific number that sits at the center of the call handling decisions for most enterprise organizations, and one that most finance teams have never seen calculated clearly. The number is cost per handled call. What it costs your organization fully loaded for every inbound call that gets answered. And what's the alternative cost on the same metric. By the end of this video, you'll have the number for 3 different models, and you'll be able to apply it to your own call volume to understand what the decision looks like at your scale. Let's start with the models. There are 3 models most organizations choose between when it comes to inbound calls handling. First, in-house. Your own staff handle calls as part of their role. This is the default for most operations: reception teams, reservation desk, or patient access teams. Second, business process outsourcing, BPO. A third-party call center, typically offshore or near offshore, handling inbound calls on your behalf. And the third option, AI voice. An AI-powered system that handles inbound calls, answering, qualifying, bookings, and responding without a human agent. Most organizations currently use 1 or 2 of these, but mostly have never seen the cost per call figure for each model sitting on the same screen. Let's change that. In-house staff. Fully loaded cost per handled call for a typical enterprise operation sits between £8 and £15 per call. This number includes salary, employee tax contribution, pension contribution, recruitment, and training costs, management overhead, and the physical infrastructure, the desk, the phone system, the square footage. When you load all of that onto a per call basis at realistic call volume, the range is £8 to £15 depending on the operation and the market. BPO, £7 to £12 per handled call. In practice, the cost per call advantage is smaller than it appears once you factor in the contract management overhead, the quality monitoring, the repeated onboarding costs when the vendor changes, and the downstream cost of resolution failures, the callbacks, the complaints, the escalations that in-house team wouldn't have generated. The net figure is closer to in-house than the headline suggests. AI voice, approximately 80 pence to £1.20 per handled call. That's not a typo. For a standard enterprise AI voice deployment, the cost per handled call, including the amortized setup cost and ongoing service, is in the range of 40 pence to £1. At the moderate call volumes, it sits roughly at £1 per call. You are probably doing the mental math right now. Let me do it for you. Let's use 500 inbound call per month as your reference volume. That's a mid-size enterprise operation. For some of you, your actual volume is higher. The rations holds. In-house, at £10 per call, $5,000 per month to handle 500 calls. That's $60,000 per year. BPO, at £9 per call, $4,500 per month, this is $54,000 per year. A modest saving on headline costs before the downstream costs were discussed. AI voice at £1 per call, $500 per month, this is $6,000 per year. The difference is not subtle. In-house is 10 times more expensive per call than AI voice at this volume. BPO is more than 9 times more expensive. At 500 calls per month, the cost differential between AI voice and the next cheaper option is over $50,000 per year. Now scale that to 1,000 calls per month, which is not unusual, and the differential exceeds $108,000 per year in savings from call handled alone, before we talked about the revenue. The cost comparison I just showed you is the cost of handled calls. But the more important number, and the one that changes the budget conversation at the senior level, is the cost of unanswered calls. Handled calls cost money, unanswered calls cost revenue. Let's model this. 500 inbound calls per month. A typical enterprise operation missed between 15 and 25% of inbound calls that go to voicemail, that hits an IVR and abandoned, or that arrive outside staffed hours and get nothing. Let's use 20%. 20% of 500 calls is 100 missed calls per month. Now, what percentage of those callers were inquiries, potential bookings, new patients, property viewings, or so? In most operations, inbound calls skew towards inquiry rather than admin, particularly in the after-hours window. Let's use 40%. Out of those 100 missed calls were potential new buyers, new business. Average value of a converted inquiry in hospitality, a conservatively modeled booking value, is between £200 and £300. In healthcare, a new patient is worth $150 to $400 in annual revenue, and property is worth $1,000 to $3,000 fees. 40 missed inquiries per month. Even at 30% conversion, conservative, that's 12 missed conversions. At 200 pounds each, that's 2,400 per month. That's 28,800 pounds per year from missed calls alone, before we've touched the cost side. When you add the cost saving and the revenue recovery together, the financial case for AI voice at enterprise scale is not marginal, it's significant, and it compounds in the direction of AI as volume increases. The setup cost for done-for-you enterprise AI voice deployment is typically in the range of 20 or 30,000 pounds. Let's use 25,000 as a reference. At 500 calls per month, the monthly saving compared to in-house is approximately 4,500. That's the 5,000 in-house cost minus 500 AI voice cost. Payback period: 25,000 divided by 4,500 per month, just under 6 months. At higher call volumes, the paybacks accelerates. At 1,000 calls per month, the monthly savings is approximately 9,000 per month. Payback just under 3 months. At lower call volumes, say 200 calls per month, the saving is 1,800 per month, payback just under 14 months. If you include the revenue recovery from previous unanswered calls, and you should, because this is the real financial impact, the payback period shortens substantially. At 500 calls per month with 20% currently missed, adding the revenue recovery brings the effective payback period below 4 months. Under 4 months on a 25,000 investment, with a 20-year steady state operational benefit on the tail. I suggest that's a different conversation with your CFO than the one you've been having. Cost per call is a primary financial metric, but it's not only one relevant variable. There are 3 risk dimensions worth considering alongside the cost comparison. Quality consistency. In-house staff are variable. Training, individual performance, time of the day of the week, sick leaves. Monday morning after a difficult weekend is not the same call quality as Tuesday midday. BPO quality is contractually managed, but, as we discussed, optimized for metrics that don't always reflect call experience. AI voice quality, once calibrated, is consistent. The same call at 3 p.m. and the same call at 3 a.m. are handled identically. Availability. In-house staff are available during business hours, with coverage gaps after hours, weekends, and during holidays or sickness. BPO contracts typically define availability windows, often better than in-house for after hours, but still subject to queue times and capacity constraints. AI voice is available every hour of every day, at consistent quality without queue degradation and volume. No shifts, no sick days, no peak period degradation. Turnover and continuity. In-house hospitality and healthcare reception roles turnover every 3 to 4 months in many markets. Each turnover costs in recruitment, training, and performance degradation during this transition. BPO turnover is embedded in service, the provider manages it, but the quality implications are real. AI voice has no turnover. The system learns and improves, it doesn't resign. When you put cost per call, availability, quality, consistency, and turnover cost together into a total cost of ownership model, the picture looks like this. In-house. Highest per call cost, highest turnover cost, best quality ceiling, but only when staffed, only for call types your team is trained on, and only during the hours they're available. The right model for complex, relationship-sensitive calls that generally need a person. BPO. Moderate per call cost, managed turnover, variable quality, availability defined by contract. The right model for high volume, relatively standardized call types where you need scale but don't want to build internal infrastructure. AI voice, lowest per call cost, zero turnover, consistent quality, 24/7 availability. The right model for after-hour coverage, high volume routine inquiries, and the call types where resolution can be completed without human judgment. These 3 models are not mutually exclusive. Most enterprise operations that are working well use a combination. AI voice handles what AI voice handles well, in-house handles what generally requires a person. BPO, if it's still in the model, handles the volume that doesn't fit either. The question is whether the current allocation reflects the actual cost and capability of each model, or whether it reflects your historical setup. 3 questions was taken back from this session. First, what is your current cost per handled call fully loaded? If you haven't calculated that number for your own operation, calculate it. The answer is usually surprising. and is the foundation for any further conversation about alternatives. Second, what percentage of your inbound calls are currently unanswered, and what does it cost in your missed revenue? This number is harder to calculate because it requires looking at what didn't happen, not what did happen. But it's the number that makes the case at board level. Third, which of your call types generally require human and which could be handled differently? That distinguish between what needs a person and what doesn't is where the cost reallocation conversation starts. I've put the cost comparison model I walked through today in the description below. A simplified version you can populate with your own numbers. And if you want to see what an AI handle call actually looks like before you build the model, there is a video link there as well.